Okay, it is October 26th, 4:06 p.m. We're calling this special meeting of the City of Utica Common Council to order. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
McNeil, Burmaster, Friend, Miola, Moody, Beatrice, Williamson, Lemenico, DeBrango, Galini, all present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our agenda for this special meeting is limited to discussion and an ordinance relating to the Complete Streets policy and the announcement last week that the lane changes, etc., and traffic pattern changes on Genesee Street between Oneida Square and Jewett Place would become permanent from the administration. At this time, I'd like to, would you like the floor?
I'd like the floor.
Councilman Lemenico.
Thank you. I'd like to bring forth this ordinance.
Okay, there's a motion.
Second it.
You have a second? Okay, would you like to read the ordinance into the record, please?
Okay, an ordinance amending section 2-31 of the Utica City Code by addition of a new section 2-31-8. I guess I should turn this on.
Yes, please.
I voted on it already too, but, there we go. Whereas the Common Council of the City of Utica did on August 17, 2016, adopt a new section of the Utica Codes entitled Complete City Streets at section 2-31 that sets forth as a purpose of the development of new uses of the city streets, taking into account bicyclists, pedestrians of all ages, landscaping, curbs, parking, and other such improvements. And whereas since the adoption of section 2-31-1 through 2-31-7, plans have been designed and suggested with the thought in mind and has resulted in a plan that affects traffic, parking, and use of Genesee Street from Jewett Place to Oneida Square Circle that has not been looked upon favorably by the members of the Common Council and was about to be implemented against their wishes. And whereas section 2-31-1 section 2-31-7 fails to recognize and provide for the input or approval of the Common Council, which in contravention of section 3-007, that should be -3070, not 3 dot, I'm assuming, of the Utica City Charter, which under the Powers Clause provides that it is the Common Council's, that provide that it is the Common Council that ultimately determines the design, naming, construction, direction of traffic, and other uses of the street of the City of Utica. And whereas the Common Council does hereby adopt a new section 2-31-8 that corrects that failure, therefore being ordained that the Common Council of the City of Utica does hereby adopt a new section 2-31-8 and set forth therein section 2-31-8 approval. No final development pursuant to section 2-31-1 through section 2-31-17 shall become effective until such a time said plans are presented to the Common Council and approved by a majority of the members of the Common Council. I'd like to continue.
Yeah, you still have the floor.
All right, I'd like to move this into committee.
Okay, so there was a second moving this, and now there's a motion to commit. Is there a second to that? Okay, Beatrice is a second.
All right, I'd like to move this to the Public Safety Committee.
Okay, that's where you want it. Now, there's a live motion to commit on the floor. Are we ready to bring that motion to commit to a vote? Or is there anything the floor would like to say before
No, I think we'd like to put it in the committee.
Well, hang on.
It's got to lay on the table, so.
Well, lay on the table or commit. This is an ordinance. So it doesn't need to lay on the table.
I'm bringing
But
it.
there's a motion to commit. If there's nothing from the floor, then please vote on the motion to commit.
Mr. President,
Yes.
can we debate this some?
No, not right now, because we're only putting it in
Well,
committee.
hold on a second. If she would like the floor regardless to the motion to commit, you may have the floor at this time, but there is a motion to commit right now on the floor.
Right, can I speak though to the general ordinance, not to the
Sure,
motion to
that's
commit?
fine. You have the
Thank
floor.
you. Okay, so this
what this is really about, is not so much the council, the powers of the council. What we're really arguing about here is whether to adopt a complete streets policy and whether the council ought to have the right to veto complete streets policy.
I actually,
That's,
that's not how the city code reads. I would never interrupt someone on the floor, but as a point of order, this is not suggesting there's a power to veto. Absolutely not.
okay, I'd like to talk about complete streets.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
So one thing that I think is really important here about complete streets in general, as we approach this question for the city, is to be data-driven. Data-driven. It's the only kind of evidence that all of us ought to consider is what kind of data supports changing the street configurations, changing traffic flow, etc. So that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about complete streets. I want to talk about the evidence that supports the use of complete streets and the need to bring that to the city effectively. So the first thing I want to talk about is bicycle tourism. In 2016, I rode my bicycle from Buffalo to Albany, and we rode right through Utica and didn't stop because there was no, Utica didn't, it was heartbreaking to me. I lived in Utica at the time, of course. And we rode right through Utica and barely stopped. There was no way to welcome us. There was no easy, safe way for bicyclists to get from the canal trail down into downtown Utica. There was literally no safe way to do it because we don't have complete streets.
Councilperson Brennan, what I'm going to do is process the motion purely to commit, ultimately because we're not debating complete streets or the ordinance that we're making a motion to commit right now. We're just making a motion to commit. And then after that motion is processed, the vote, I would like to return the floor so you could continue to speak about complete streets.
Okay.
I'd also like to add that everything you're saying up to this point is what many of the people that sit before us right now agree with, and that's why they passed complete streets. At the time, the council did not process a transfer of power, and I think that's what this is about. So, can I please have the vote on the motion to commit?
No, I want to speak to the motion.
To the motion to commit?
Yes.
Okay, then you have the floor.
I'm just confused as to why we had to have a meeting if it was just going to go to committee. Because if we, in my opinion, we could have just submitted this, not had a meeting. And if we're going to vote on it the next time and talk about it the next time, we could have did it there. I'm comfortable to vote on it. That way, I mean, we're here. We could have just did it to Melissa then.
I too did not know this was going to be a motion to commit until right now. I'm just processing the motions, and the council can't discuss anything unless we have a meeting, so they called the meeting. I was called Friday to organize a meeting on behalf of the council to discuss this issue and deal with potential legislation that would be before us. That's why we organized this meeting. I had to rearrange my day and do all kinds of stuff to get here myself, and the reality is that's the business of the council, so I was okay with that. So, I can't control the motion floor. Councilman Durango?
I'm going to agree with Councilman Moody now. This legislation is only to give the common council approval of what takes place in our city streets. Whether it's downtown, whether it's South Utica, North Utica, West, at least we have some say in it, rather than just let the administration go in there and draw up some plan that we're not even aware of. So I think what we could do as a council is vote on at least giving us the say of when and where and what we're going to do in certain sections of the city. That's all I'm asking, because, you know, the council persons that have their own districts, I'm sure you want to know what's going to go on and what's going to take place. So I think we all should just kind of sit back. I would agree with this legislation, just giving us the power to overlook, to see what's going on, and then say yes or say no, or make a suggestion at the time when they want to make some changes. Thank you.
Okay, the motion to commit. Now, I did, with this legislation, have three things printed and handed out to the council. One is the actual general powers of council. Two is the attachment to the Complete Streets policy, which is the document that goes along with it, and then also the section of the general incorporation of the Complete Streets policy. Now, if you turn to the general powers of the council, page 2 of 6, B7. Now, this is already a power of the council, okay? So we're not adding powers of the council today if we approve this. If you read this, it says, do any of the following. This is powers of the council, general powers. Regulate the use of streets and sidewalks by foot passengers, animals, and for vehicles. Regulate processions and parades, etc. Prevent encroachments upon obstructions of the streets and authorize and require their removal by proper officers. Regulate the opening of street services for purpose authorized by law. If you go through these powers, it's already prescribed in the general powers of the council that the council does in fact have these powers.
Mr. President, can I ask a,
Can I have my hand up
Well,
for a second?
hang on just one second. We do have a motion to commit, and that does take precedence over the motion to
Okay,
move the
let's do it,
legislation.
and then I want the floor.
So, there was a second to that motion. The only way out of the motion to commit is in fact to vote on it at this point, other than a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, you have to have a unanimous to bring it out on the floor, all right? Because we're just introducing it today.
Well, all right, so to clarify that, this has been moved to the floor. It
Right.
has had a second.
But,
And if this was going to be approved today, it would need
right. So
unanimous approval.
I was told that it probably wasn't going to be unanimous to bring to the floor. That's why I was bringing it to committee and just get it over with. Now, if everybody feels that they would be willing to bring it to the floor.
No, it's on the floor. If you vote on this, it's
No,
either up or down.
you know what I'm saying. You know, if everybody, I will pull it,
Just,
let me finish.
well,
I
hang
will
on.
pull it from bringing it to committee if everybody's willing to vote on this.
Right now, there is a motion to commit, and if everyone votes, and this receives one not down vote, then it gets voted down. That's fine. It's explaining this.
Just put it in committee.
Yeah, let's just vote.
You already said
We'll
we're
discuss
gonna
it.
put it in
Let's put it in
committee.
committee.
We'll discuss it later.
All right, as the chair, I'm asking for your vote on the motion to commit. There was a second to that motion.
It's all-
Okay? Vote, whether you want this in committee or not.
There you go.
It needs adopted.
All right, it's not, the motion to commit,
Okay.
this is not adopted. If there's anyone on the YouTube channel, this has been placed in committee. All right, Councilperson Friend, and I did, because her conversation was not specifically germane to the motion to commit, say that she could have the floor afterwards. You may now return the conversation about.
I'd like to yield the floor to Councilman Beatrice, and then I'd like to claim it back then.
Okay, Council Beatrice.
Yeah,
you have the
so
floor.
before we go any farther with Celeste talking everything, yes, it is on. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me there, Counselor?
Okay, now.
Thank you.
All right,
Okay, so before we go on and listen to what Celeste has to say, I just want to explain one thing. Everybody is for the Complete Street program. I agree with it, okay? However, it doesn't have anything to do with changing traffic patterns on the Complete Street program. I have it in front of me here. The proposal for changing traffic programs came from the mayor in 2013, before we even committed to a downtown hospital, before we committed to the commerce and what's going on here. So nobody is against Complete Street program. I just want to make sure everybody knows that. So there's no sense keep going on and talking about we didn't have a bike path, we didn't have all that, because I agree, she's right, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about that out of nowhere, we came with a test program that they were going to run for a little while. They ran for 3 weeks. They didn't run it through the winter. I can't imagine having 2 lanes of traffic on Genesee Street. Okay, myself worked as a delivery driver for 20 years with 4 lanes you couldn't deliver on Genesee Street. I can't imagine where they're going to plow the snow. That's all I'm saying. Now, there's certain parts of Genesee Street, actually the part that they did the test on, it's not a real busy spot. It was kind of nice. But you can't go for 2 lanes on all of Genesee Street. That's all I'm trying to say. And nobody here is against the Complete Street program that was passed in 2016. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
okay, Councilperson Friend, the judge wanted to mention something specific before he has to leave, because he does have something pending.
Okay.
And then after, you're welcome to all the meetings
Very simply put, you have the power completely control anything that happens on a city street in the city of Utica. You've always had that because it's history. You can't give out a traffic ticket unless you can point to an ordinance that says you can't park there. You can't do anything with a street in Utica because under the general power provision, all of that has to be under legislative power, not executive, because it's history. It's the basis upon which we have parking, which streets one way, which street move, where you put a stop sign in the middle of the street. You have to do that. Now, this particular program that was introduced back in 2016, I've talked to the author of the legislation, who believes that the Common Council powers were retained. I said, well, I've read all through this matter and I can't find it. Now, the Common Council has the power to transfer its powers. I don't think it was the intent that the Common Council, and certainly wasn't that council person, to transfer your powers. Now they had a plan that was about to become permanent. It makes no difference if you're for or against it. You never got the opportunity to be for or against it because that plan was never submitted to you, nor will any future plan be submitted to you regarding this program, Complete Streets, because I don't find anything that says it has to be. So all this ordinance does is correct and retain your powers, which you already have under the Utica City Charter, that you cannot do any changes to streets and anything else or any plan without the prior approval of review of the plan and approval. Now, Jewett Place to Oneida Square is a plan that was about to become permanent. Some of you objected to that. But the plan was never submitted to you because I don't find any place in the law that said it had to be. Although in the city charter, all of these powers are yours. Now, did they, and do you wish to transfer your powers to the executive branch? I don't think you can do that because how a street is made up in the city of Utica, whether it's one way, 2 lanes, 4 lanes, parking, no parking, signs, curbs, all that, is a power reserved to the legislative body because it's your history. It's the basis upon which forever determines how that street is going to be either one way or not. And you can change it. The executive branch can't do that. So, when some of you said to me, how can they do this without us? I reviewed the law. I don't say anything that stops them. I don't think that the commissioner did anything wrong. I don't think, I certainly can't blame the mayor. It was an inadvertent absence to specifically state you cannot do such a thing in the city of Utica and under our particular rules unless the plan is submitted to the Common Council if it involves anything that changes anything on the city street. Now, whether you're for or against the proposed improvement is not the discussion here tonight. Now that if you pass this, that plan of Jewett Place to United Square or any other plan has to be submitted to you. And if you find 5 members who want that plan, it passes, and they do it. If you find 5 members who don't want that plan and it fails, they don't do it. And that goes for all of Genesee Street and all of the city of Utica. One person can't decide whether there's no parking on the east side of Blindina Street in the city of Utica unless there's an ordinance introduced and adopted by you. City can't make it no parking. They don't have that power on the executive branch. And that's one of those separation of powers things that you got a memo on. There are certain things that are reserved to you, and there are certain things that are executed by the executive. Change these city streets, directions, parking, curbs, all of that is reserved to the Common Council. It's not in this law. I can't find it.
Mr.
And
President?
because it's not in this law, I did what I was requested by some of you council persons to look at it and see if it's anywhere in the law. I don't find it. This corrects it. this says that every plan, no matter what it is, that has an effect on your city streets must be submitted to you. And the majority of the members have to approve it. Now, if there is a plan about Jewett Place, and they want to submit it to you, it's for you 9 people to decide whether you want it or not. It's for you 9 people to have a discussion with the executive branch of Mr. Thomas and the rest of them. And if you're convinced you want to do that, fine. If you're convinced you're not want to do that, fine. But as it stands now, they were going to do that permanently, announce it in the newspaper. And some of you didn't like that. So, this issue tonight is not have anything to do with Jewett Place tonight. Just preserving and preserving the power you already had. And correcting an absence in the law. Because it's almost implied that you transferred that power, but I don't think you ever intended to do so. And I think the transfer is somewhat improper. Because that's the charter. You can't amend the charter in that manner.
Thank you.
So that's all I have to say. And I think that
Thank you.
this procedurally, once you pass this on first reading, we should have a motion to adjourn.
All right, well, I did want to, in the interest of moving that motion, I had to commit earlier, give the floor back to Councilperson Friend to comment on complete streets in general. But I do agree, the purpose of this meeting was not to debate complete streets. It was purely to sort out the issue of division of power. So you have the floor.
That's fine, I won't debate complete streets tonight then. But this law, everything that the judge has just said makes this ordinance completely unnecessary. It's utterly repetitive to what's already in the charter with regards to our powers. So again, to go back to Councilman Delvin Moody's point earlier, why are we here?
Well, the agenda was to speak about this as a group because the council can't speak as a body unless we have a meeting adjourned. Okay, so we had a special meeting because obviously there was cause for that because there was a public notice from the chief of staff that went out saying that these modifications were going to be made permanent. That is why the council people got together, there was a few of them, and asked if I could call together a special meeting to discuss this. Even if we had no legislation today, there was absolutely cause for this meeting.
I understand that, but my point is that everything that the judge just said says that this ordinance is repetitive to what's already in the charter.
Yes, and that's, and just if I may add
Well,
something from
that's not
earlier.
exactly what he said. The judge says that this particular legislation sort of overrides what that charter
No,
is saying.
that's, whoa, let's stop interpreting what the judge said, what the judge said. It's
Well,
the general
Judge,
powers of the council.
well, no, that's not, no, what the judge said that we had to do this because the way the legislation was written, it sort of gives, we were giving up
Sort
our
of is the
powers.
problem.
We were giving up our powers.
Implications are not law, that's why the judge offered the clarification. It is of the opinion of some of the people in the room, myself included, that the general powers of the council already established that this could not have been done unilaterally by the administration. That's why we had this meeting. Councilperson Fred, do you have anything to add?
I'm done.
Mr. President, may I clarify one thing? So just listening to what the judge says.
We have no other business, just so you know.
Okay, and just taking care of all this, the way I see this is in our charter, that it's our power to have a say on what goes on in the streets. But in the complete street legislation, there's a loophole in there that does not state that they have to come to us.
Well,
So, am I correct? I'm just asking the question.
one, I can't answer that question. Two, the judge just said it's implied. Three, I requested that very thing from Corporation Counsel to ask, in which part of the Complete Streets policy do you believe you can do this as the administration without council approval? I have not received an answer yet. Once I get an answer,
I think this legislation takes care of that.
Right.
I think that's what this legislation, and this is the only reason we brought this legislation up, was to make sure that there was no backdoor, we weren't gonna get backdoored on this. And so once this is done, I think that
But
we
the
could
committee,
continue with the plan, and everybody can vote on the parts that they like and the parts that they don't like. But that's all I brought you in here for today, was to take our powers back and to make sure that we have a say on what goes on our streets.
yes.
That's all this was for. It had nothing to do with anybody's section of the city or anything of that nature. It was just to be able to make sure that the council has the right to say what happens on our city streets.
All right, due to the comments on the floor, the judge wants to re-clarify again. After that, if no one else has any other business, please make a motion to adjourn.
I discussed this with the Mr. Miola, he asked me a question. And there were some councilmen that wanted to abolish this law completely. They said, I want this thing repealed and annulled. I read the law. I think it's a pretty good law. I mean, it really gives room for the city to do a lot of advanced improvements. And I think that's fine. And that's what the executive branch is for, and that's what the law implies. But ultimately, you can't do those sort of things without common council approval.
Exactly.
And I don't think, I sincerely don't think, because I talked to the drafter of this law, the person who introduced it, who thought that that power was reserved. And he mentioned the word implied. Yes, there's an implication, but I'm not an implication person.
Exactly.
I want to make it perfectly clear to everybody. It's my duty to tell you and everybody else, this is your bailiwick, just like the executive thing about closing and opening the front door. That's an executive power. You can't pass any legislation to do anything about that. This thing, you can. And you get to vote on these plans. There's a lot of things that could come up. I think Lower Genesee Street may have to have some revisions or contemplate. I think that that's fine, but at least the legislative body will see it, look at it, and 5 of you agree. That's it. That's what the charter provides. That's what it is. And I saw no point in abolishing and repeal the entire law. It's not a bad law, it's a good law. But
Okay.
you've got to be in it.
All right.
And I'll put you in it. That's it.
All right, so my legislation, and the legislation here has nothing to do with abolishing the street
Well, no,
plan.
I think that's in
So
there.
what I'd like to do is move to close the meeting.
All right, is there a motion? There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I got it.
All right.
Okay, any opposed from adjourning? Okay, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
1 second. Council,
Oh,
no, I just want to ask him about a meeting.
oh,
Authorized.
Yep,
I know that you took
that can be yours. I didn't mean for that to happen.
November 4th.
Yeah, I didn't
took it
mean
by
for
the
that.
phone.
I think that was a miscommunication. I didn't expect that to
I
happen.
wanted to have a public safety meeting.
I
I think
know.
I mentioned that last.
No, you did. And that's why I was surprised as much as you were when I saw that. That meeting time is yours.
So can I have my public safety?
Yes,
Thank you.
that is your, yeah.
they're
I think
fine.
we
They
just
can
kind of-
schedule meetings outside.
I think we
business
just
of council.
miscommunicated a little bit in the meeting. When I saw that, I was like, I didn't need that.
Melissa, Melissa,
I don't think any